So after getting back into modeling after about 25 years, my boy getting into Warhammer 40K, and I thought it would be kind of a fun thing for our family to get into, I like the Imperial Knights. And after spending 150 bucks for a model, I thought, man, I don't want to be buying 10 of these suckers. So I started looking up ways to make a modular, because we used to do that with all kinds of models growing up, making a bomber be able to be multiple versions of a bomber. So I started finding things about magnetizing, and they had pretty limited videos on what they did, which I'm not going to walk you through what I did on everything, but I'm going to show you everything that's been magnetized, and it can kind of help you go down the path you need to. We'll get into the equipment and materials we used to make things magnetized, but ultimately, you can make any combination you want with these with a little bit of practice and a little tutorial help and asking questions. But these things are amazing. There's great detail, but it would suck to have 30 of these just to be able to play all the different variations you might want to play. So we'll start with the top. We have the carapace mounted weapons. This is the Icarus cannon. Underneath is a magnet, and on the top of the carapace is a magnet. And this allows you to swap between them and place them very neatly and quickly on there and swap out depending upon what your battle plan is. The rocket pod, so that you're not stuck with a single rocket pod, inside you use the magnet that you already used to prop it up, and I built a little arm and glued the magnet to it so I can swap out from rocket pod to rocket pod. And then that will go on there. I'll eventually make this so it can pivot up and down, hopefully. And it's not put together, so ignore it falling apart. These are just kind of sitting on there so you get the view of it. So moving from these top mounted pieces, we'll remove the carapace here. Maybe. Okay. And inside, because you have the option to build the Knight Preceptor, and I thought just for the extra detail and having fun, I would want to do that, but I didn't want to be limited to having to do all that work and be able to play until it's done. So I came up with a way to be able to mount him in and out, and that is putting these magnets inside there and using that magnet that's there, and then you can put him in. He locks into place. He's in there pretty solid. You can take it out and you can still work with it. And he just pops in there just like so. And there's a few other pieces that will be going in there, but for the show we have him in here. Found out the hard way that if I glue them in, he doesn't come out. So put this in here like so. And there he is. And for a lot of these, the molding, Games Workshop, in some ways you might think they plan on people doing something like this, because this hole, you cut it out and it fits what's almost a 5/16 magnet, which we'll get to the size, but that's about a 5/16 magnet, and it fits right in that hole, and now you can magnetize everything to it, and it's good to go. But that's how that goes. Get all this stuff out of the way. And we'll move along here. So now, we'll go to the arms before we go down. The arms originally have a twist lock, but instead we glue a magnet in here and a magnet to the sides here. And you can put any arm on either side, and a magnet here and a magnet here. And now you can put the cannon as you want on there. Now I started with this arm for a specific reason, because I noticed that this specific gun piece here is used for 3 different weapons in the build. It's used for this rapid fire battle cannon, it's used for the las impulsor, and it's used for this thermal lance or thermal cannon here, which we'll get into why we got this over here, because you may run into these problems and so you have to do some rework. But one of the things I noticed with all of them is they kind of built one, and then they put the magnet on the front, and then they just basically swapped whatever gun they wanted, and it left a lot of detail and importance to the model out, I felt. And so I came up with ways to make it so you can do the entire line of weapons minus this, which right here I started with this gun as well, because this I would have been better served, rather than gluing it to the main body, to glue it to the back side of this, so every time I pulled it off it would go back on, because you could, it tells you to glue it there in the instructions, and had I glued it there, this doesn't get used for any other weapons, so you could have pulled it off and put it back on and it wouldn't have been there. But it doesn't really detract from the look once I get everything else put together, which I'll show you here in a second. So this goes on, lines up, then his body, the ammo can for the rapid fire cannon, goes on like so. And then I modified this so it fits over that, because this hose isn't supposed to be there if you use this gun, because like I said, they set them up to only be used one way, but they kind of left a few options. If you have a little try and a little know-how, you can kind of work your way through these solutions. So I glued a couple magnets there, a couple magnets inside here, goes over like that, boom, have the battle cannon. Take this off, take this off, take the las impulsor shield, put it over this, take the magnetized las impulsor barrel, put it over that, and grab the las impulsor side piece, and it clips over just like so. And voila, you have 100% las impulsor. And I can take this off, take this off, take this off, and I can grab the thermal cannon and put this on here. Oh, put my magnet on backwards. See? Rework, and I put my magnet on the wrong way, so it doesn't want to go in there. But that goes on like so, assuming you don't mess it up like I did. And then you put this over here, and now you have a fully functional thermal cannon. Now, you know, important to pay attention and kind of doing this, you check before you do it. I had taken these parts out of the box and the magnet was missing because it somehow come unglued. So I glued it back in there quickly. Having dropped it, didn't notice that it flipped on me, and I didn't double check it, and so now I've got magnets that don't want to work. So you get into these situations, you may have to get some of your tools and pop this stuff out and start all over. This is freshly glued, so it shouldn't be too hard to get out of there. Get down in here and just pry it out of there, and we'll show you how to put a magnet in real quick before the super glue sticks me to too many things. Get yourself a good, slow, workable super glue. Liquid stuff, you run into too many problems. You'll take the super glue. Before I do this, I'm going to make sure that my magnet's going in the right way this time. I'm going to take the magnet, I'm going to come over here and make sure it's, nope, see I have it the wrong way. So I flip it over. And now I make sure I got it the right way. Not too much super glue on me. Get the glue out. Grab your piece. Now, as you can see, I'm using one of my little finishing files. It gives you a good way to keep it magnetized, keep control of it, and keep your fingers out of there, because you will find... Oh, that's right.
Okay.
I promise. Look.
So when you put it in, it's going to need to be flipped so that side's up.
No, it doesn't, because it goes in this... Oh, you're right. See? I about did it again. And the camera boy here is making sure that it's correct. Yes, you're right. That's what I did, is I dropped it earlier, and then I brain farted on how you do it. But then you take your magnet, and you slowly work it down in there. Going for flush. And now, as you can see, it's It's flush there. May have to get a little brave, put your fingers on there, but you want it to be so it doesn't interfere. I know that it doesn't look pretty, but the work to get it in there sometimes can be more difficult. There was a lot of plastic to build. So we'll set this off to the side and we'll come back to it. We'll try it later and we'll show everybody what it looks like. So we'll set these pieces out of the way and we'll move along. So that's all of this gun, that gun setup. Is all these pieces here become modular and you can use them. And that way you can make a more complete model. It might not matter if you're going this route just so you have playability. It probably doesn't matter to some people. But it did to me, to have as much detail in it as possible. Because they did a wonderful job making these models as detailed as they could. I don't know why you'd want to give up that detail. So now we'll go on to the chainsword. Pretty simple design. And again, you put your magnet in there. All you have to do for these, the modeling itself, very minimal trimming. When these pieces glue together, there's already a hole because it's supposed to go over the end of this nub, which we cut off with a saw. We'll go over the equipment we use, but there was a little mushroom cap, if you will, that was right there, and this would clip over it. But instead, you put your magnet in that hole and you cut off that end, glue a magnet there. And pretty simple. Magnet in there, you have your chainsword. And now we'll go to the Gatling gun, which just like the others, but it doesn't share a body with anything. So you just put your magnet in there and you can put it on either arm, as it is in the models. They have it on the left and right arm. They also have the sword in left and right arm. So it can go either way. And there, this goes onto there. Now, the piece that for many people might bother them, because the hand itself is glued into place and these digits have no movement for your model. Well, that was not okay for me. You've got all this detail, you have all this capability with these models. Why not make it mobile? Now the thumb, as it was, could go in there and would move, but it was loose. Once it snapped into place, it would just fall down to this. It wouldn't stay. So as you can see, I forced a BB down into that spot, and it expanded it just enough that it makes it tight inside there. And so where you put the thumb, it stays. And then the fingers were all magnetized to be able to be moved. So you can move your hand and your fingers. They don't stay. I may put wires in there so they can do that. The problem with wires, is I found in the past when I used to model, is you have so many times you move it and then it breaks. Now you're trying to figure out how to get a wire out, put a new wire in so that you can manipulate your model, and that's not good. So now I've got a model that can move. And the way that was done was pretty simple. Drill the hole in the end of the hand with the hand drill, and got these little cylinder magnets, put them in there, drill the hole down the middle of the finger, and push the magnet in there, and voila, you have fingers that move around and you can do things with them. It's not perfect, but it's, it gives a little more life to this amazing model that has all sorts of abilities that get stuck in stone when you use glue. But now I have a model that with this hand, you put it on, he can move up and down, he can be put anywhere, you can turn his hand, and you can move the fingers around. And that's pretty cool, to be able to put a giant robot on the field and point him at the orcs and say, I'm going to kill you next, kind of thing. So there you go. And there's his hand in pieces. And that end was a dome. Cut it off. Inside there's a magnet. And we'll get to the magnets and parts and pieces that you use. But that's how it's all goes together. Inside the hand is a magnet. Inside there is a magnet. And there you go. Comes with many different shield options. Pretty simple. Rather than gluing this on according to the directions, right here, you just put a magnet onto the end of that, and then you can change your faction, if you will, or whatever you want to do. Everything else maintains its ability to move, but that comes off. The arms come off quickly and easily. You can break him down to be moved. Now the last part, which is one of the first parts you actually do, is inside here, inside this body. I have a stack of magnets, if you can see. And you need that strength. You need a very firm hold on this body at the torso, so when you turn him, he stays, because you add a lot of weight with these magnets. It may not seem like much, but it is. And so if you don't do that, he'll get sad on you and just droop. So, but inside here, if you have ever done one of these, you'll notice that there was a nipple looked a lot like this, but there was a nipple. Well, I cut that all the way off, bought my stack of magnets, and I built this up and rounded with plastic and a little bit of heat and stuff, and sanded it down so that I could maintain that smooth motion and had a way to build a stop. So I grooved the body, the torso here, and it allows him to move and come together. And the first thing that led me down this path of modifying was right here. See, the head's not supposed to do that. And I broke mine because when gluing it together, I managed to somehow get glue between what used to be a shaft right there, and it glued it, and the head wouldn't move. And that was not okay for me. So I had to find a way to solve that problem, and it started me down this road. And I came up with this. And then the other thing I thought, well, since the head was already messed up, incident with heating up a magnet, don't heat up your magnets and try to push them in. They'll lose their magnetism. I found that out. Ruined this head pretty much in that process. So his head's magnetized. I can take it off. It's great because I don't have to worry about breaking it. I can use all of that. But the next thing I did was, you know what? I don't want to have just one face. I would like to be able to swap out the faces. So I gave him brain surgery. And we glued a magnet inside here. And now you can swap out these faces at will. Have another face here ready to go. And we're going to show you how to do one real quick. And then we'll check our other gun. And then we'll call it a video. And if you have any comments, I'm not going to check very often. But if I see a comment, I'll reply to it with any questions or answers to questions you guys might have. But we'll go over here. We'll check this. We'll make a head that works on this new head. And then we'll go over the tools and materials we used. And then we will try that can and see if that glue's dried up. So we have many, many magnets, and finding what works best. I'm not going to say these are the best. They worked well for what we're doing. But for most of your setup and things, you want to use pretty strong magnets. You can use a magnet on the opposite side of a piece to hold your piece in place when you get set up. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get your head, the piece you're going to magnetize, and make sure the magnet you're starting with is on there the way you want it to be. So then you take it off of that piece, and then you magnetize it to your tool or whatever you're transporting it with the way it's going to stick to the piece. So in this case, we're going to put it on here like that. We're going to grab our head like so. Grab our head like so. Put this magnet down in there. And we're going to grab this magnet off of here. We're going to pick this up. Oh, I messed up because I gotta make sure I'm doing it the right way. So again, I stuck it on there to make sure I'm going the right way. Stick my magnet on the end of this. Stick it in here. Now, I'll get it. I'll grab it. Now my magnets are where they need to be. Ooh. I'm doing this so poorly, probably because I'm trying to make a video so people can see me do this. So, grab the magnet again, stick it on your tool the way it was stuck to the piece.
Flipped from the way it was stuck to the piece.
Well, yeah. This head seems to be harder than some of the others for some reason. I'm going to do all this, and it's going to be upside down. And I'm going to have done it the wrong way for you. It'll be awesome. Now, you can see I've got it all lined up. That magnet's there. It's holding it in place. Now, what I should have done, which I didn't do, and I was doing it a lot before, was you use something that's plastic and it's not going to stick to your piece to move it around. So you cut off a piece of sprue, works pretty well because it's non-magnetic, and it'll allow you to move your piece where you want it and you don't have to fight with it. So now I get it centered like so, right there at that brow, and from the front it's out of sight, you can't see it. Now we grab our super glue, and you don't have to be super careful with it. Anything you get where you don't want it, you just kind of pick it up and scrape it off. You just don't want to get it on too many of your mounting surfaces. You don't want to cover your magnet too much. So now we'll leave this and we'll let it set for a few minutes right here. Now we'll grab this guy and I'll show you. Hopefully that glue's set up enough and he's not going to pull apart again on us. But again, you take your shield, goes on, and then this goes on. And now you have a fully functional thermal cannon, I believe they call it. It's got all its pieces, nothing extra, nothing's missing, except the hose that was on this is now gone. Interesting. I may have to find that. But all you do to fix those things is you glue it on, you make sure it's lines up, and you're good to go. I may not have ever actually put that one on. I might have forgot that one. Because I know we got this one. And we have the Laz Impulsor one. So I may not have glued it on. Or maybe it shared one with this. I don't know. I'll have to go back to the directions. But once it's here, you just glue it on, make sure it lines up right, and hold it. And then you can pull these pieces off. But again, magnets in there. Magnets on here. Complete weapon. Alright. So now for the mini supplies. I went to Home Depot to get these. It's an easy place to go. These work great because they break pretty easy. They give you irregular shapes to help you fit a magnet in a place that's kind of weird. Like inside this hand, inside this wrist, I couldn't put a regular magnet in there. The hand itself was too small. It wouldn't close. But one of these broken into about a quarter. That quarter fit right in the wrist, and it gave me a way to magnetize that. Otherwise, I would have had to go with a lot of magnets in there or something, and it might have affected how the fingers worked. So, that's what we went with. Now, you will use a lot of these. You will use, this magnet is the most common. When you assemble these pieces right here, it is that size of hole. You don't even have to do anything. It literally fits right in that hole, right out of the package. So, these get used in a few other places. They were used in a few of these because it's a very strong magnet. I think they're good for like 3 or 4 pounds. It's pretty significant for a little magnet. And it's just a great way to vary your things. I think I used them on actually right there is where they were used. I mean, they're strong enough they can hold the, they're a pretty strong magnet. And then last are these. And this is one of these is in the bottom of this right here. Just one of these. I think these by themselves are good for like 5 or 6 pounds. There's one of these. And then off of Amazon, I got a bunch of these magnets. And I tried these in place of those because these are unwieldy to use because they're so strong. They're snapping out of your hand before you get a chance to do anything. So you really have to be prepared to have easy work. So I got these magnets from Amazon. right here, they're the same diameter, but much smaller, as you can see. And it allowed me to kind of stack them to get the magnetism I needed, to get that strength down in there, and allows you to have the magnetic strength you need to be able to have a solid connection here. Because without it, before we had a stack of magnets, put everything on, and he just pretty much fell apart. The arms would pull the body off. It just wasn't good. So the other thing that you're going to need to do a lot of stuff is your square shapes, these magnets. And these off of Amazon, I don't think I paid but $8, maybe $9 to get these magnets. It wasn't much, and that's for all of them. And these little guys that are inside the fingers, they're fun to work with. I suggest you work on like a metal chair so you can always find them because they disappear quickly. But they're great for doing all sorts of work because they're tiny and you can put them anywhere. And they actually have pretty good hold strength for no bigger than they are. So they were a good addition to this. The other thing you're going to want is you're going to want this hand drill. You're going to want to get one. This is Army Builders. There's 150,000 of them out there, I think. On Amazon, eBay, you go to a local hobby shop, you can find them. They're pretty cheap. It's kind of a must-have. You can use a power drill. You can use just a drill bit in your fingers, but it kind of gets a little difficult with these smaller ones. When you get to a bigger drill bit like this, you can do it pretty well. But the problem is, like mine are quality drill bits, so they bite. They're a little aggressive. You got to gauge your pressure, because if you push too hard, you're doing stuff like this, and you end up with a really awkward, uneven cut because it just took so much material at once. And then a file to fine tune your edges. I've got a bunch of files, but I just left some of these out. You're going to want a little jeweler's file. One like this, it works great because you can do round, because it's half round and it's flat. So you can work edges tight with it. You can do round with it, and you have a flat, because you want everything to be smooth or as neat as you can make it for this stuff to work. You're going to want a utility knife, obviously, to clean up and cut up things, correct your mistakes sometimes. Who knows? But a utility knife is going to be necessary. Cutters for your sprue. We happen to have these fancy Citadel ones, but I usually use my actual snap-on ones. But these are great because you got to keep that stuff as neat as possible. You don't want to be correcting a bunch of stuff that you cut out. And then the bone saw for making neat fine cuts. You can tell that blade is very, very thin. Maybe a little bit thicker than a razor blade, not much. And then the fine detail saw, which I have multiple blades for this, but the same thing. When you're cutting small things, you don't have a lot of room, or maybe you're cutting underneath something. You're going to need these tools to do it. And I shouldn't say you need them. They make your life a lot easier. You can do it all with a utility knife and a file. But it's a lot more work than if you have the proper tool. This thing works great for getting rid of some of your burrs, but again, I default to a file. But this is the Citadel tool. Comes with their toolbox to get rid of burrs and sprue lines, things like that. So I hope this helps. It was a lot of work. This model right here went together in the time it took my boy to basically assemble an entire Acadian army in like 5 tanks, and he did it faster than I did this model. So it's not fast, but it's definitely worth it, because this model now counts as all of these models in one, and my own adaptation on them if I wanted to, because I can be the only knight preceptor with a sword in the right hand and a las impulsor in the left hand. You know, that it's different, and some people like that. Hope the video wasn't too dizzying and you get something from it, and post questions if you got them, and I'll reply when I see them.